Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be my top 5 builds of the patch in terms of enjoyment. The ones I really enjoyed, right? Because guess what? The next patch is coming in about a month, so it's time to start, thinking back and looking back at the patch, considering it's been I think 6 months or something like that. So we might as well talk about what I played this patch. So these are going to be builds that I enjoy. They're not necessarily going to be the best builds ever, and I will make sure to point that out. If you actually want to play any of these builds, I will point out if they're good or not. But this is supposed to be my personal enjoyment and not actual strength because, sometimes in the last Epoch, I want to have just a little bit of fun, dude. I'll be honest, all the Falconer Andes, they can go screw themselves for all I care, dude. I've been playing the game for 4 years, way more than 10k hours at this point. Sometimes I just want to log in and have some fun. So that's what these builds are going to be. Now, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me, and it's the best way to show me that you want more content like this on YouTube. Also as well, I live stream on Twitch. If you want to see me do any of my work live, make sure to check out a stream. If you have build questions, you can come ask. If you need build help, come with a build planner and I can definitely do what I can to assist you. Now, let's talk about these builds, shall we? So the first build that we're going to be talking about is going to be the Earthquake Gathering Storm Shaman. I think that this build just knocked it out of the park in terms of flavor and was decently strong. Now, this was a part of the Zero to Hero series, so as you can see, we're in a little bit lower corruption than you're used to for videos of mine, but that's just because I was trying to see how fast I could go from level 1 all the way to 10 out of 10 Harbingers on a solo character found, meaning that this had no access to any other gear whatsoever. He had to farm all his gear and also level by himself. And it was an interesting experience, definitely a learning experience as well. The idea is we utilize Storm Totem to generate a lot of Gathering Storm stacks, and then we expend those Gathering Storm stacks utilizing Earthquake. This combo ended up feeling like some of the best clear I've ever had in last Epoch, mainly due to the fact that I had well over 120% movement speed at level 80, while also of course being able to just click a button and watch a bunch of storm bolts go off. Now the single target wasn't the best, and that's just generically because of the nature of storm bolts, as they aren't the strongest thing since sliced bread, but they're definitely a skill that requires a little bit more investment to get going in terms of single target DPS. But the interesting thought is there's actually a way of improving this build single target DPS considerably by essentially making it so that we can use our Earthquake as well for damage. Now, of course, I'm not going to do that because Earthquake is probably going to get nerfed into the ground, as Earthquake hit does a very large amount of damage. There's a very good reason why he decided to stay with Earthquake utility on this build instead of going Earthquake giga damage, and that's mainly due to the fact that Earthquake is just generically overpowered right now. So I'm gonna wait to do that till after the Earthquake nerfs, and then we'll try this build out again. This is definitely a build I want to revisit and twink out and the best gear ever, and it's just going to end up being my favorite farmer at 700 corruption. I'm literally just going to run mono after mono after mono, farming a favor so that I can buy the copious amount of items that I need to constantly to keep up with demand on Merchant's Guild. So yeah, this build, great. I can recommend it. Like I said, single target's a little bit lower, but you make up for it for your insane clear speed. Now we have another build from the Zero to Hero series. I found a lot of good builds this way, by the way. This time it's going to be Volcanic Orb Rune Master. So Volcanic Orb is very well known to do a very large amount of damage thanks to the explosive ground. And of course, this time around, we're converting it to cold. It does a lot of damage, and it did a lot of damage the whole way through from the moment I put it on to the end of the 10 out of 10 Harbingers for this specific run. And I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to replay it on Merchant's Guild and actually twink it out and see how much damage it could do. Definitely a build I could see myself doing Uber Aberoth on eventually, when the new patch comes and I actually invest more than a shoelace into the build, right? Considering that, like I said, sole character found, literally leveled it from scratch. and still doing insane damage for that, right? And the thing is like, it's not super uber damage. It's just like very fair and good damage, like very exciting amounts of damage, mainly just because like it's good enough, but not so good that they're going to nerf it into oblivion, which I'm very happy with, because I really don't like it when I play a build that does uber amounts of damage for no investment. Like, for instance, a good example of your Storm Totem, because it's bugged, because like I'll make a video on it and then it'll get nerfed next patch and it'll be boring. Now, of course, this only matters if we get a patch more than once every 3 months, but you know, I'm hoping for the best in the future. But yeah, the whole concept of this build though is we just play Frozen Orb like normal, okay? But then we utilize Rune Bolt's massive mana capabilities. We stack cast speed, which not only allows us to chuck out volcanic orbs faster, but it also allows us to generate mana faster. And we utilize the skill queuing system that is currently in last Epoch, and that allows us to simply hold down 2 buttons, and the playstyle ends up being very convenient. Now, you can go for a shrapnel-based setup instead of what I'm doing here, but it requires more investment, as it requires a lot of plus levels and stuff like that. Yeah, overall, very fun build. Less clear than the one we just talked about, but the survivability and the damage is through the roof on this build. I'm very happy with this performance. So this one isn't going to be the best build ever, but this was a science experiment that was so crazy that even Eterra Monthly decided to put it in one of the Eterra Monthly episodes for the last Epoch forum or whatever, right? They chose this build specifically because it was just very unique at the time. And that's because we were utilizing World Splitter to make our Smelter's Wrath charge faster, because what happened was I put a World Splitter and a Nemesis Egg live on stream, and it hit tier 7 melee flat fire, I think, or something like that. And it's like, fuck it, let's play some Smelter's Wrath. So if you don't know, World Splitter gives you increased area based on your mana costs of your melee attacks. And of course, Smelter's Wrath scales charge speed based on your increased area. And both of these work very well together, allowing us to skip that stupid bullshit charging speed that you have to deal with Smelter's Wrath. And it ends up making you do very fast Smelter's Wrath. The only problem though is being that the Smelter's Wrath, they don't get as much more damage bonuses because of the fact that we're spamming them, but because we're spamming them, we just get more of them. And this is integral for clear, because being able to quickly put out Smelter's Wrath is way more important than like trying to do optimal single target DPS. Let me tell you, this build was not an easy ride the whole way through. It took a lot of investment. This is probably one of the higher expensive builds that I've played, just mainly just because of how much I enjoyed it and I wanted to play it more. Now, of course, the video before this I made, it was like I played a Forge Guard and I regret every minute of it, but that was because of Forge Guard. The build itself and the skill itself, like everything about the build was great. The only thing that really like lacked on, you know, the build's end was just Forge Guard in general, because Forge Guard doesn't really have support for an archetype like this in the way that like the other classes do. Like, you can't get tanky enough, you can't do enough damage. Like, Forge Guard was very bad for this build, but the problem is Smelter's Wrath is a Forge Guard only skill. But of course, we are getting a bone next patch. We're going to be able to run a 2-hander and a shield at the same time. This is very good because it means we can dump the World Splitter and just go back to the max charging rate again, where we just go as slow as possible to hit as thick as possible on bosses. The reason being is because we don't have to, you know, charge faster if we're just immortal. And turns out running a shield while also running a 2-handed weapon, that's a good way of starting to become immortal, because not only can you run a Titan Heart at the same time, but you can also run a shield and a Titan Heart at the same time, which, I'll be honest, guys, sounds pretty fucking good. So that's going to be fun to play with when we get there eventually. But yeah, Smelter's Wrath, not terrible, but definitely expensive due to the fact that it's a Sentinel and a Forge Guard. Now, probably one of the strongest 0 to hero characters I've made, and that is the Puncture Net Trap Bleed Blade Dancer. The reason being is because of the massive amounts of survivability you get by going hybrid health and ward, while also on top of the insane amount of damage you get for being a bleed build utilizing shadows and stuff like that, while also having pretty decent clear because the nets just have really big AoE and stuff like that. So all of that combined leads to just a really good rogue build. This was definitely one of the most successful zero to hero runs possible. I was not entirely sure that this was going to work or not when I started, but we ended up just like making up some bullshit around the way, and we ended up with a very strong rogue build in general. And turns out rogue can just be strong no matter what you do these days, so that's cool, right? But the idea here is we're utilizing net to throw like a bunch of traps, which then trigger puncture, right? And that causes a bunch of bleeds on single target. And then we push this even further by utilizing synchronized strike, which then creates shadows, which then all of our shadows will throw 3 nets each. So my character will throw 3 nets, and then each shadow will throw 3 nets. So we end up having a lot of nets on the target. Now, there's only a maximum amount of nets that you can have on the ground, trap-wise, meaning that some of them will instantly pop when you do this, but that's fine. Who cares? But what's cool about it, too, is the caltrops. The caltrops end up doing a decent amount of damage, too, because it turns out every single time you cast a net, right, that counts as a cast, like the shadows cast it, right? That counts as a cast of net, meaning that every single one creates a caltrops, at least from what I'm noticing in the footage, which is great. It's a very good synergy. But yeah, very fun build. Can recommend. Just if you're a rogue lover, good build, right? Now, for the last one that I enjoyed, this is going to be the Bone Curse support build. Yes, you heard that right, support. So because of the fact that Perry and I were really bored, because guess what, we hadn't had a patch in a very long time, we decided to play some multiplayer, but we decided to do it with a twist. Instead of trying to play it with just 2 generic guys, just having some fun and shooting the shit, we decided to go with a setup where we're kind of like forced to work together in that regard, and that is because we're utilizing Bone Curse to deal all our damage. But I'm not hitting the boss to apply Bone Curse. My fellow friend Perry the Pig is. We're applying Bone Curse to the enemy, and then Perry the Pig is so nicely attacking with a marksman here, as you can see, and they're just applying a bunch of hits per second thanks to Explosive Trap. And that ends up making our Bone Curse actually do damage. As you can see, all that damage that you see on the boss right now, that is Bone Curse doing it for me. And that's like, I think 30% of my flat damage is base as well. It is an absurd amount of damage. It is crazy, and it could probably get way higher if I invested more into it. But the idea is we apply Bone Curse and Perry procs it. And that ends up being very strong. The main reason why we're doing it on a marksman specifically, though, because there are other classes that can hit more. I think there are plenty of other classes that can hit significantly more than this. The reason why we like it on marksman is because since the fact that Perry is hitting for my Bone Curses and stuff like that, but he's not really benefiting from the leech. I'm benefiting from the leech because I'm leeching the enemies because I'm doing the damage, right? He's not doing damage. It ends up making it so that if he just ends up playing marksman, though, you can get the you can get the 75 health on crit on the top of the tree, on top of like some ward rings and stuff like that, and he ends up becoming immortal because, you just stands there and hits things. And because of that, he can focus his mana to be perfect. He doesn't have to care about his damage, which makes his character very unique. While also, my character is also very unique. I'm playing a Bone Curse build, utilizing, of course, all of the curse effect, anguish stuff. We're utilizing, Chthonic Fissure to give me even more flat damage. Rip Blood also to give me flat damage. All of that combined ends up being just a fun character. As you can see, it gets very laggy here because he's using Dragon Song because he's a prick. But, as you can see, plenty of damage. Now, of course, it wasn't the best damage ever, but we got a little bit better and we ended up fighting Aberoth. Now, of course, we ended up killing Aberoth with less than dubious methods, meaning that I didn't end up making a second video on this build, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. It was very fun playing multiplayer, but definitely at the time, people really didn't like it in general. Like, this is probably one of my worst performing videos of all time. In general, so people really didn't like it, but I enjoyed it, and Perry sure as hell enjoyed it. He enjoyed playing like a marksman that did damage. It was really fun, and I look forward to doing something similar to this again in the future. But that's going to be it for this build as well. Now, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. It's free, assists me out, and shows me that you want more content like this on YouTube. Now, with all that being said, bye guys. Thank you.